This is Lisa from MobileTechReview, and this is the OnePlus 6, the latest, obviously, phone from OnePlus. The company makes the so-called disruptive, fairly flagship phones for less than flagship prices. These days, when a lot of flagship phones cost $850, $1,000, right? This one starts at $529. Nicely configured, as they say. It starts out with 6 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of storage. You can go up to 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage for $579. Or max it out with 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage for $629. So it's not cheap Cheetos, but it's obviously a lot more affordable than something like a Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus that it competes with directly. It is a big phone. It has a 6.28-inch widescreen 19:9 aspect ratio. It's 1080 in this way, but it's 2280 in this way, if you get my drift. It has a notch. This is the thing for 2018. Blame the iPhone 10 for that, but I have no problems with the notch. As ever with a OnePlus phone, it might not be the most expensive phone on the block by a wide margin, but it is always one of the fastest. You have the Snapdragon 845 inside with Adreno 630 graphics, currently the fastest Snapdragon CPU available. And as always, their operating system is really well-tuned and lightweight in terms of the UI. In fact, it looks a lot like stock Android, so that really helps the performance too. OLED display, lovely as ever, dual rear cameras, and here's a big change, glass back. Now, one of the things I actually liked about the OnePlus 5T, the OnePlus 5, was the fact they had metal backs, because glass is, well, obviously easier to break. Even if it is Gorilla Glass 5 front and back with 2.5D curved glass on the front, you still have to be more careful. The reason that manufacturers have gone with glass backs is for wireless charging, but this doesn't have it. So we're being, I guess, trendy in terms of the glass phone thing being in, but you lose out on the one real reason why we have phones that are more delicate for that. Now, OnePlus does say that it allows for even better reception, and this does have excellent Gigabit LTE in here, like 20 bands. So AT&T, T-Mobile, including the latest bands that they're using, you're covered here. This is not Verizon, this is not Sprint, it still doesn't do CDMA. It's an unlocked GSM phone, so you can use it with any GSM carrier pretty much anywhere around the world and get LTE, but not CDMA carriers. We're going to look at it now. So the phone is available in 3, I'll call it finishes, because we're talking black and white here. We have the glossy one that is called Mirror Black, and then there's Midnight Black and really a very pretty silky white. The Midnight Black and the silky white have a matte kind of sandblasted finish. They're still glass though, and it's a very smooth finish. So like a really smooth trackpad, glass trackpad. So they're not any more grippy. If you're thinking you're going to get away from the slippery soap symptom, it's going to be here no matter what. Happily, they sell a variety of really attractive cases, shell-style backs that you can get affordably on their website. Undeniably, this is a really pretty looking phone. You know, you don't have to spend $750 to get a pretty phone. Sure, it doesn't have the curvy glass size like a Galaxy S9, but it's 2.5D glass, it's slim, it's sleek, and no creaking, no uneven seams, nothing like that. It's really well put together. You might not get wireless charging, but as ever you get dash charging, which is their flavor of fast charging, and it is the quickest among fast charging solutions. However, you still have to use their charger and cable if you want to use dash charging. Now, any other USB-C charger is going to work. Say you have a Samsung Galaxy charger still laying around, it'll work and it'll charge it pretty quickly too, but not as fast as dash. Sadly, and I guess it's fair for the price here, it is not IP-rated water resistant. That means you can't go swimming with it in your pocket in the pool. You can't immerse it. If it gets splashed with some rain, they call it water resistant in that way. It's not going to be destroyed, that kind of thing. A little splash from the sink, if you have it beside the sink when you're washing the dishes, that's okay, but no immersion whatsoever for this phone. This is a dual SIM phone, so for those of you who like to have 2 SIM cards in your phone at once, it's more popular overseas than it is in the United States. You've got dual SIM carrier here. Again, GSM unlocked, no CDMA support whatsoever. Looking around the phone, we have really everything is nicely kind of hidden here. You barely even can see that SIM card carrier area there. Our volume buttons are over here. USB-C down here, supports USB host. And USB audio as well. A headphone jack. How nice, huh? Speaker right here. It's a mono speaker, no stereo speakers. Again, fair for the price. So it has average sound. It gets plenty loud, but it's not stereo, no separation and all that sort of thing. We have our power button, and we have the slider switch over here for mute slider. So when you slide it, it'll tell you on the screen. It's a 3-position switch. So Position 1 goes to vibrate. Position 2 is silent. And then, of course, the third is the normal ring. You can also use software to set whether the volume buttons control the ringtone volume or the media volume by default. And I think a lot of people would like the media volume to be the default on the phone. Clearly, we have a notch over here. This is the year of the notch. So we have our front camera here, we have our sensors, that sort of thing. So by default, the notch is exposed. Now, a lot of applications are just going to put up a black bar here and it's going to disappear. If you don't like that, there is actually a software setting to hide that. So you could have a black bar all the time. I like it the way it is. I have no desire to hide it. The phone runs, as ever, what they call Oxygen OS, which is really their customizations on top of Android 8 Oreo. So this actually supports Project Treble. So for those of you who are aware of the Android P beta that's available for select devices, this is one of them. And that's one of the selling points of OnePlus. They're pretty fast with the OS updates these days, and they even support something as cool as the Android P beta. The customizations here to Android's user interface are pretty minor. You've got the alert slider, which I've just showed you here. We have gestures here. So basically, this is something that's going to be done in Android P anyway. So I don't know. You can actually hide these buttons down here and use gestures to replace them. But like I said, I think most people are just going to roll with what Android P has to offer when this gets updated to that. Under advanced settings, we have pocket mode, which is a good idea so you don't accidentally pocket dial people. On-the-go storage, on and off, which has a timeout because apparently it uses a good amount of power. Opting out of OnePlus notifications, user experience program, system stability, all that sort of things. Privacy, the things that, well, folks do care about. The phone has the usual rear fingerprint scanner, which works just fine, and the front now does facial recognition unlocking. It's uncannily fast. Now, it's not supposed to be as secure as the iPhone 10s, and maybe even not as secure as the Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus, but it does it in a pinch, and I wasn't able to fool it. So that was it unlocking by seeing my face. Did you see how quick that was? You didn't even know that that was happening. That's pretty good. The phone has a lovely display. It might not be as high a resolution as the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus that it competes with, but you know, it's close enough. And goodness, the PPI is extremely high on it at 2280 by 1080. That's high resolution enough. It supports the DCI P3 color profile, sRGB. You can see it on screen there. So the colors are very nice on this. It doesn't get as bright again as the Galaxy S9 Plus in that super outdoor mode, but it's plenty bright enough to see it outdoors, even in our bright Texas sunshine. The phone has NFC, MiMo Wi-Fi with really excellent reception, by the way, aptX and aptX HD support. Now, the cameras on this are pretty darn good. Again, you know, I'm going to say this over and over again. If you spend $1,000 on a phone, you're going to get something of a better camera here. But for the price, it's really an excellent set of rear cameras on here. Pretty good front camera, though. That 16-megapixel front camera captures enough detail that unless you have gorgeous and perfect skin and are pretty good looking and you look okay in the usual wide angle front selfie camera sort of way, you might actually want to turn on beauty mode because it'll capture every wrinkle and every flaw too. All the camera sensors are made by Sony. You can see the specs on screen here. The main 16-megapixel rear camera has optical image stabilization, finally, yay. It shoots 4K video at 30 frames per second and 60 frames per second. That one's up to you. The video is not bad. I think it looks a little too over-sharpened, which can make it look a little bit harsh. You can see our 4K sample video to get an idea of that. The optical image stabilization, that was extremely effective. Even though I was walking while shooting, you couldn't see any jumps, any wobbles, any jitter, anything like that. And you've got slow motion video at 240 fps at 1080p and 480 frames per second at 720p. Now that 720p, 480 frames per second looks pretty low quality and pretty blurry. So I think you probably want to just go with the 240p unless you really are dying to have a super duper slow motion. But you can see what it looked like right on screen here. The secondary 20-megapixel camera is used for the bokeh effect for the background blurring to capture additional detail and to help with low light. And it is pretty darn good in low light. We have some samples that are going to run by on screen, and you can see some that were taken in low to very poor light. Not a nightclub shot, granted, but it does the job pretty well. Both of the rear lenses are f1.7. The front lens is f2.0. And you've got Pro mode, panorama, raw capture, all that sort of stuff. The camera UI is pretty simple on this and pretty straightforward. It's not as feature-rich as something that Samsung or LG would throw out in terms of all the settings, but on the other hand, it's pretty intuitive and pretty easy to use, so I think it works out pretty well. Battery in this is 3,300 milliamps, which is par for the course for a larger body phone. It's not the largest battery we've ever seen. It's not ungodly tiny either, but typical for OnePlus phones, they have quite good battery life with 4.5, 5 hours of screen on time. The optimizations and the fact that the resolution isn't pushing the outer limits of what's possible here really do help. And it's a Energizer Bunny of a phone, I have to say, for something that's running on this fast a CPU. And speaking of that, the Snapdragon 845 is as fast as you can get right now. You can see a few benchmarks running on screen here. OnePlus is never at a loss for power and for speed, and they do things like tweak the animation speed to make it a little faster so it looks even more fluid and quick. So all in all, though, the days of the really cheap OnePlus are gone. I have to say that they're really doing a very good job of offering you pretty much all the things that are important in a phone for several $100s less than the competition, be it the LG G7, the Samsung Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus, obviously the iPhone 10 and even the iPhone 8 Plus, and even Huawei's top offerings. They come in considerably under, and I wouldn't mind carrying this phone. So that's the OnePlus 6, and you've seen the pros and cons. Overall, I really like this phone a lot. I like the OnePlus 5T a lot, too. It's very attractive. It's also quite huge, so if big phones aren't your thing, man, this is one of the biggest phones around here. This is senior size, if you know what I mean. It's fast, it's clean, they have timely OS updates. You can even do the Android P beta now. The cameras on this are pretty good. Yes, they're not as good as the much more expensive flagship phones on the market, but it's close enough that I think most average people who are not photo enthusiasts probably won't even notice the difference a lot of the time. So for saving that much money, I'm down with that as well. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like this vid.